welcome to BoardGameCast episode 11. My name is Jesper Edmark, also known as Mordachai on BoardGameGeek, and I am the host of this show in which I give you full sessions of board games. In this episode, which will be a bit shorter than usual, I will give you a quick game of Ruse and Bruise by Jesper Edmark. And Ruse and Bruise is a fast and devious card game in which you try to get the highest value in each column to get the point card in that column. And in the end of the game, after 6 rounds, you want to be the one that has the most value in all your point cards. And if you have managed to get one of each kind of the 6 different point cards, then you get to double your value. So that is something that usually give you the victory in this game. This game is deceptively simple. A number of point cards are dealt out on the table as the amount of players, and when each column has at least as many cards as the printed point card value, then the column will be scored, and the one with the highest total points in their cards will win the point card. Except that there is a few exceptions. There's quite a lot of exceptions actually. But you go around the table and placing one card, you have a hand size of 3 cards, and when you place them face down, and when someone puts a card beneath another card, you flip the card that is above it, so the face up card is exposed. Now, several of the cards have special effects when flipped up. The assassin, for instance, that was shown here at the start of the game, kills the card immediately that flipped it up. The traitor that is flipped up here, will exchange 2 columns, the point cards for the 2 columns. The explorer, which will be shown later, will move from one column to another, and the next column to the right. And the storm is a card that blocks any player from putting more cards into that column. That column is also considered finished. But since the round isn't over until every column has at least as many cards as the point card value, you can have rounds that go on for longer, since you can have more than the printed value on the point card in the column. So if every player would fight over the same column, then it would be a never-ending game. But that won't happen, because someone will break down sooner or later. Now, when there are enough cards in the column to end the round, and this is happening here, now the round is over and you start to scoring them. And when you start scoring, you have to look at the cards in a specific order. First you look, is there a musketeer in the column? In that case, all the special effects on the cards, and most of the cards do have special effects, are negated. So only printed value on the card is working. If not, you look at, is there a wizard? The wizard kills every card that has a printed value of 10 or above. So he usually clears the column pretty good. After that you look at, is there a witch? The witch kills all cards that has a printed value of 9 or less. And she doesn't kill herself, she has a value of 1, but a combination of a wizard and witch will leave only the witch left in the column. Observe that the assassin has a printed value of 9.5, so he is not affected by the wizard nor the witch. After that you check, is there a prince and a squire combination from the same player? If that is the case, that player wins. Of course, if there has been a musketeer, a wizard or a witch in that column, then either the special effect doesn't work or one of the prince or squire has been killed already. So that's you usually do not win a column by that combination, but if you can manage to get it in, that is one way to win a combination where you a column where you otherwise would not have the enough point value, point total to win. And last but not least, you look at, is there a beggar alive? If the beggar is alive, then the one with the lowest total of all players in that column win the point card instead of the highest total. So it is a game that is deceptively simple, but then again, it's a lot of the cards changes the rules, as in many other card games of this type. But other than that, gameplay is rather quick. This was including rules, 35-minute session. I cut it down a bit, but if you do not have as much banter as we had this session, we talked a lot about other things while playing here, then it's usually a very fast-paced game. As I said, the game is played over 6 rounds, and there are 6 different point card values, and there are 6 cards of each type. The areas, as they are called, are alchemy, fencing, agriculture, trade, religion and music, and they are represented by the icons. The point card value in each area are ranged from 1 to 5, and there are 2 copies of the number 3 card. So you cannot be entirely sure which of the cards will come out in a specific session, unless you are playing a 6-player game. Then all the point cards will be available. You want to strive to get one of each type, but that usually is quite difficult to achieve. Now I say usually because if you are lucky, you can actually get, all the players can get that effect, but usually only 1 or 2 players manage to get one of each type. And the more the opponents check what is happening, the less chance that you are able to do that, because they will try and stop you from getting that last fencing card that you need to complete your series. Most of the time it is a quite cutthroat game. You try to bluff out your opponents from doing putting in the columns that you want to have. It can be a good strategy to pump all your cards into one column if it's a card you really need. For instance, I need a religion card here, I can have a very high focus on the religion column to be able to have a better chance of winning that. But you can never be totally sure of winning column unless you have a very high point total and musketeers in that column. And you only have 1 musketeer cards. All the cards in the game are unique copies. Each of the players does have the same deck of cards. So I know that each player will have 1 musketeers card, but if I know that the other players have already used their musketeers, then I do not have to be afraid of that when I'm using my special cards. So you really try to bluff out your opponents. You try to gain a little headway each round. Both me and June here, we had very good early games and managed to get several cards. Then basically Emil took the brunt of the beating here. He was not very lucky with his placements, and this can happen, especially if you try to diversify between columns too much. But then again, you do not want to only focus on the high scoring cards or in very single-mindedly in one column, because unless you do have the musketeers, then something like the beggar can come in at the end and just win the column outright, no matter how many points you have in that column. So it's a very it's a very bluffing kind of game. You really want to keep your opponents on the edge all the time, and it's very easy to keep the opponents on the edge in this game. The player who was sitting at the left of the last player in the earlier round, like in this case, Henrik placed the last card in that round, so that means that Emil, who's sitting on his left, will be starting the next round. And it's usually very beneficial to end a round. Yes, it's a good thing to be the first one in a round, because you can get into columns that you really want without running the risk of triggering an assassin or something like that. But at the same time, going last means that you have a control over when the round ends. And if you know that you will lose a specific column that you can otherwise win if you put in more cards into it, you can forego ending the round, so you can maybe win instead. I consider this to be a very enjoyable game, simply because of the fact that you laugh most of the time when you're playing it. But if you notice here that we make a mistake because of the banter we had, if you noticed the lack of a red card here, that's because we managed to skip over Emil's turn here because of the conversation we had. So that is something that can be an effect of having a game that is very socially interactive and is very forgiving in the case of table talk that is not related to the game. This game is a very fun game simply because of the fact that you certainly have an opportunity to speak not about the game, but the other things as well related to the gaming world or anything else. And there are a lot of laughter in this game, certainly. What you saw here was a very short round, simply because of the point cards being very low. If it's a round with high point card values, then there has to come out more cards on the table before the round ends. And in the other case, in this case, we had the highest point card value had a value of 3, and the total of cards that was required on the board was 9 cards. And we had a couple more than 9, but that still is something to really think about. When there are low cards, point cards on the table, it will be a quick round. You will not have time to build up a large combination of cards. Also, you of course have to have the cards on hand to be able to build combinations, and you can strategize a bit regarding the cards you have in hand. You can save certain cards until it's good time to place them. For instance, if you have this prince, you might want to wait until you get the squire to be able to utilize that combination. But at the same time, since you only have 3 cards in hand, you cannot save a card indefinitely. You probably will have to place them out, because some of the cards are inherently of less worth than other cards. For instance, there are 1 card connected to each area, each type of scoring card, and those are worth 8 if placed in the column that is not of its type, and it's worth 12 if it's placed in the correct type of scoring card column. But that is not a very great effect. Many of the cards have worth that is higher than 12, no matter what column they are placed in. So you might want to throw them away, but you have to find the times when to throw those cards away. So it's seldomly worth to save Lord of the Corn, as we call it. Lord of the Manor is the card. To be able to win extra points in agricultural column. It's 4 extra points, but it's probably not worth saving it because it probably will be one of the worst cards in your hand of 3. So you might want to use them on a low scoring column of another type instead, just to be rid of the card. The best cards in this game usually are the ones that affect the scoring in the end. So that would be the Musketeers. The Musketeers is one of the definitely best cards because you make it safe in a column. But also the Beggar, used well, the Beggar can win columns that a lot of people have fought over, even if you have only put that card in, especially if you have only put that card in. The Witch and the Wizard are quite powerful if you manage to get them in at the right column. One thing to remember here is that if there are 2 or more witches or 2 or more wizards in a column, they fight each other and the effect doesn't take place. They still contribute their point value, but the magical effect of killing every character above 9, or rather above 10 and above, or 9 and below, those do not come into effect if there are 2 of the same card in that column. So if you are faced with a situation where you have already spent your Musketeers on an earlier round and you manage to flip up something, a wizard instead, for instance, in a column that you see that if this wizard is allowed to have its effect, then I'm going to lose this column. But if I manage to negate the effect, then I'm going to win the column. If you manage to have on your hand or draw into your hand your wizard and get that into place on that column before the end of that round, then that effect will be negated and you will still be able to probably win that column. As seen here, the Storm can be very powerful, simply to lock a high scoring card, a column of a high scoring card into place. So in this case, the 5-point card of trade or coins was locked with only 3 cards in that column. One of the most interesting card in the game is the Invisibility Cloak. That is in itself worth 0 and it doesn't do anything, but when flipped up, you get to take 1 card from your hand and place it hidden beneath the cloak. And that can really be a nasty surprise for the opponents. So at the end here, you take your point cards and you calculate the value. If you have one of each type, each area, you take the highest card of that area and you double it. But any extra card in that area are -1 point. So the best hand you could get is to get the 5 card of each area and nothing else. That will probably never happen. But in this case, you see that I have a lot of points. Simply because I have one of each type and I have a lot of 5s and a 4, it is quite high scoring round in this game, especially in a lower number of players game. So I won here, and Henrik, who had also managed to collect one of each type, came second. June did not manage to get one of the types. He didn't have the fencing area, so he just adds up his entire total, and that is his score at the end. And Emil won 2 cards in this game. If it had been an average, he would have gotten 6 cards. So he laughed a lot. That's a good sign. But he also cursed a lot about the game. But it's a fun game, and if you want something quick, it's something I recommend you to try out. Other than that, I simply bid you farewell, and I hope to see you next time for a bit longer episode, a bit more normal episode. Bye bye.